Hey students, this is chapter 1 for quantitative methods. The chapter is titled Assessing the Quality of a Measure. So before I begin, getting into the chapter, I did want to speak about a few things that perhaps will help students. I understand over the years I've been teaching quantitative methods for a long time, and over the years I've noticed at different levels, undergraduate, graduate level, students are very nervous about quantitative methods especially. The research methods class, which I also teach, they're nervous too. But it seems that a lot of students feel that there's so much math involved in quantitative methods. And because students generally don't like math, they get nervous, they get scared, that this has become a common thing to email me about and say that, I'm a little concerned, I'm worried about your class, including even before the semester starts. I've had that happen actually. Hopefully that will not happen. I would really hope that students are not that nervous about this course. I would also hope that these videos that I'm going to provide you for each chapter, I hope that it will assuage and maybe take away the stress. So to recap the way I run my courses, all of my exams are out of class. They're all open book, which means that you should not be collaborating among each other, sharing answers. You are allowed to use AI within limited means, but you do have the freedom of choice in how you want to answer the question within certain parameters and the guidelines in which I put the question together. Many of the students that are in my courses in the discussion board, I generally like to give questions, and then students have an opportunity to answer those questions. But the discussion board questions, excuse me, are actually very, very similar to what's on the exams. So that is one way that students should not feel nervous about making it through this course. I actually believe, and I really do mean this, I think the student's lowest grade on this course should be a B. I don't think it should be less than that. And in fact, many of my students end up getting an A's and very, very occasionally get an A+. I don't like to hand out A+. A+ are for significantly really good work, basically. It has to be like a different universe of work, which does happen a few times in the semester, but rarely. Getting an A I can almost getting a B in my course because I have very strict grading guidelines, and the questions are very straightforward. They're not difficult questions to answer and ask, and you have at least on average 10 to 14 days to turn in the exam. So for all those reasons, I think students should feel very calm and peaceful regarding their grade in this course, which, again, I always encourage students, come and talk to me if you're having problems. Send me an email. And I will respond usually within 2 to 4 days if it is something genuinely urgent. If it is something that I've already addressed on Canvas, I would tell you, I've already posted this answer online. Please go read the announcements or something like that. Finally, I want to say this, and this goes for all the courses you take at any university and any of my courses, any of the program. Always, always, always read the syllabus. The syllabus is like a contract between you and me, and any professor will tell you the same thing. When you have doubts about something, you have questions, the majority of time actually you can save yourself writing the email by reading the syllabus. Look it over. Now, I'm going to tell you a little trick that maybe some professors would probably prefer I don't tell you. You can actually put the syllabus into AI. You can move it into ChatGPT or Claude or whatever AI you're using at this time and ask it to give you the most important things to figure out. Ask it to pay attention to something. So I highly encourage that. Always try to collaborate with AI if you can. AI is there because AI is there to help you. And as someone who uses AI on a daily basis, for many different things, both personal and career-wise. AI can really help you use it. Don't be afraid of it. Don't think of AI as your enemy. Think of AI sort of as like a tutor in a way, maybe, a friendly tutor. And for many students that I've worked with over the years, they've used AI in a way that even I did not think was possible. And it is probably our greatest accomplishment in mankind and humankind history, actually. So, that being said, I want to talk a little bit about Chapter 1, Assessing the Quality of a Measure. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the concept of citizen trust in government. Considering this concept of citizen trust in government for a student, for one of you students watching this video, it's clearly not observable when you think of citizen trust in government. Develop two operational definitions for measuring this concept. Let's say, for example, you want to try to think of something like that. What are the potential strengths and weaknesses of each approach? Now, let me talk to you a little bit about citizen trust, because I think that's one of the important questions to talk about in the course. And if you are in one of my public policy, political science, and public administration courses, this may be something that may be very useful for you to understand, because you may be a public sector worker down the road, and you may have to think about citizen trust, without which we can't really accomplish anything, because trust is everything, actually. It's a foundational concept in political science, but it's inherently unobservable. Now, trust requires operationalization. Researchers have to translate the abstract concept into some kind of observable indicators that can be measured according to explicit procedures, as outlined by Jenkins Smith et al. Now, that's our textbook, of course. Now, this process requires moving from a nominal definition, which just simply describes the meaning of trust, to an operational definition that specifies the precise criteria for assigning measurable values to cases. Now, operational definition 1, survey-based self-report. A primary operational definition measures citizen trust to survey instruments that prompt residents to rate their trust in federal, state, or local government using a Likert-type scale. For example, 1 indicating no trust and 5 indicating complete trust. And I'm sure many of you, like myself, who enjoy McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's, when you go to those restaurants, they always give you a receipt at the end, and there's always it's what's called a Likert-based survey, Likert scale. And it's a scale of 1 to 5. How much did you enjoy this burger? Was this the best gosh darn burger you ever ate? Or maybe it was not. And of course, you have to respond like, yeah, that is really the best burger, because I really would like those free fries next time. So yes, absolutely, number 5. Don't feel bad. I do the same thing. So I like those burgers too. So if they're the best burger in the world, I'm not so sure about that. This method, of course, possesses strong face validity, as it is logically consistent to infer that direct questioning about trust captures the underlying concept. Furthermore, this approach facilitates systematic comparison across populations and temporal context. The use of multiple survey items enables assessment of reliability, often through statistical measures such as Cronbach's alpha, which you don't have to worry about right now. We'll get to that. However, of course, this operationalization, see, even for me, it's difficult to say these things, so don't feel bad if you don't get the concepts, presents notable validity challenges. How can something be valid, of course, right? Respondents may ascribe different meanings to the term government, anchor their responses in recent political developments, or they have, enduring attitudes, or offer answers they perceive as socially acceptable. Sometimes we modify our answers because we're in the presence of some people. You may notice that all the time when you go to workplace or your job or your spouse, your house. You may not want to say certain words because, of course, it may not be socially acceptable to say certain things. And of course, everybody behaves differently, right? You are students. You may say and do different things around different people. You're different around your parents and your brothers and sisters and your friends and your professors. It's different. I'm the same way, of course. Such factors then introduce measurement error, thereby undermining both the reliability and validity of the resulting indicator. Now, there's second, operational definition number 2, the voluntary use of non-means government services. So, for example, An alternative operational definition employs behavioral indicators, specifically voluntary participation in government services that are not contingent on economic need, such as the use of public libraries, public city parks, public recreational programs, online government portals. The rationale is that citizens who possess higher levels of trust are more likely to engage voluntarily with governmental institutions. This measure offers the advantage of capturing observable behavior rather than self-reported attitudes. And administrative records can often provide usage data free from self-report bias. Nevertheless, this behavioral measure introduces significant concerns regarding construct validity. As the authors discuss, a valid indicator must both converge with the intended concept and distinguish it from related but distinct phenomena. Utilization of government services may be driven by factors such as convenience, accessibility, or economic considerations, rather than trust itself, thereby weakening the measure's alignment with the underlying construct. For example, an individual may distrust the government, yet still use a public park, while another may trust the government, but have no occasion or even a need to use such public park services. Now, each operational definition captures a distinct dimension of citizen trust. The first reflects attitudinal self-report. The second measures behavioral engagement. Both approaches then entail inherent trade-offs, a give and take, between validity and reliability. So something may be very valid, but it may not be reliable. It may not be very reliable. Something could be very reliable, but it may not be very valid. Now, as the authors emphasize, no single method can guarantee validity, but researchers can enhance the robustness of their findings by employing multiple indicators, systematically evaluating construct validity, and seeking consensus within the scholarly community. Integrating both attitudinal and behavioral measures is likely to yield a more comprehensive and accurate assessment of citizen trust in government, which is something that some of you as public sector workers may be called to do down the road, possibly. Now, let's talk about another question in chapter 1 that I want to speak to you about. Excuse me. Let's talk about, excuse me. The text describes 4 types of validity: face validity, construct validity, predictive validity, and consensual validity. Rank these 4 types of validity in terms of importance for establishing confidence in a measure. So let's say, let me talk to you a little bit about this now. The most important type of validity, now your professor's opinion, is construct validity. Because the theory matches up with all the other indicators, it's also imperative. Predictability is second, most important. When something is so obvious to where it is easily predictable that it simply adds to reliability, in my eyes as your professor. Consensual validity is also important, but not as much as the first two, which is, of course, construct validity and predictive validity. So those two are also important. It's important that others agree with you, let's say, right? Consensual validity. But if all the indicators match as well as predictions, consensual validity is practically ensured because you already have it actually. You have the first two, right? And face validity is the last part. Face validity translates into something as merely seen as true from the surface level. It's like sort of like judging a book by its cover, but it is not really like a good validity way, basically. It's like, you know, they say don't judge a book by the cover, but people do it all the time, right? They all the time, they make inferences and shortcuts to judgments. Just simply by looking at somebody's car, for example, they think, well, I think I know what this person is like. Or the inside of the car. You know, it's a messy interior. So hence, you know, this person's also very messy. And maybe their house is very messy. You know, that might be, but they could be married and their wife is a neat freak. And the house is spick and span and clean and everything. So how does that make sense? See, it's hard to do all that, right? But those are the four definitions. A lot of people think that, you know, consensual validity is also very important because experts have to agree together. But you will notice something as we go through the program, and you may notice this in life. The more experts you have that agree on something, the more likely it is not to get challenged. And we actually saw this a few years ago during the COVID pandemic. The majority of experts started saying, yeah, we got to lock down, city lockdowns, and people have to stay inside, and all of this, and restrict travel, and nobody go to work. And then it came out, actually, maybe that was not such a good thing. A few people started saying, but they were their voices were so marginalized, and they were so small on the sidelines, that nobody actually came forward, actually. So unfortunately, we kind of missed out on that, because if we found out later, which I think students may know this, that we may have gone too far in terms of like keeping people locked down. Certainly elderly people maybe some sense because they had weakened immune systems. But we sort of exaggerated or over-exaggerated. We sort of over-exaggerated the danger of COVID in that sense. A lot of young kids stayed behind at home, and they weren't in school. Some people may know this. If you're a 5-year-old and 6-year-old, I don't think they're going to pay attention on Zoom very much longer than maybe 5 minutes. So a lot of these things unfortunately come about because the challenges are not brought forward. So something to consider as you're going through life and your career is try to find ways to challenge, but find a way to challenge in a very amicable manner. And there's ways to do that by being diplomatic. One way is to always try to raise questions. Well, and to give praise or flattery, at least in some ways, where, I really like that idea, but maybe we could explain a little more. Or I appreciate you explaining to me so well. What do you think if we, and that's a really great idea you have. I like how you put that. But maybe you could, what if we thought about it this way? Would that be something that might be, interesting to you? So that's why some of the best salespeople, they're very good that way. They can persuade you in to go buy that car. You really don't need that car. But, hey, it happened. Well, that wraps this up for chapter 1. I hope that a little bit of knowledge was given towards you and your light, and your tuition's dollars counted today. And I look forward to seeing you all in chapter 2. We'll talk soon. Thank you again for your time.